And good morning, Mr. Bowden. Welcome
morning,
back.
Everyone.
Welcome back.
Yeah.
So you know the drill. 10 minutes.
I do, Mr. Chair.
We're not talking about the water storage scheme as such,
No,
but we're talking about
I
the potential for flushing flows. Okay?
Yeah, I
10 minutes.
Slightly amended that, but
Good on
okay,
you.
ladies and gentlemen, councillors, Mr. Chair, I wish to make, if I may, a profound statement that I think will resonate certainly into the future, as I did 20 years ago about climate change, and of course I've been proven to be right about that. I would like to make this statement, and it is by one of United States' most eminent physicists, and it goes as this. One of the greatest failings of the human race is our total inability to understand the exponential function, this being one of the most important mathematical equations known to man. When understood, it exposes human society's zest for endless economic growth at the expense of the natural environment and the consequences that will follow. Ultimately, what it shows is the limits to growth, whether economically, agriculturally or environmentally. If we allow endless growth to continue unabated, then there must surely be grave consequences for all of humanity and all species that reside with us on this finite and beautiful planet. For this function spells out unequivocally that endless growth is not an option to help protect our natural environment that sustains the very fabric of our society, the very fabric of our well-being. Your regional council's annual and long-term plans must consider and incorporate this very important function. For this very means that humanity cannot continue to expand on an indefinite path on, for all intents and purposes, a finite planet. The exponential increase in global population will forbade such an outcome. We must consider fully the consequences in the continued expansion of the dairying sector, as one example is its present format, without environmental consequences to our rivers and lakes. With or without the dam, a fight to save the Tukitook River will become, and may I say, an immense and mammoth task. In my submission, I quoted the words and views of Simon Cowan, a retired qualified accountant, whose article appeared in Hawke's Bay Today on the 5th of May last. His article struck a raw nerve, expressing the views that I also share, rightly or wrongly, for I am yet to be convinced that the building, and I exclude that, will solve the crisis that the Tukitook River now and into the future faces. For all body waste from animal species, including human, migrate through the soil to the streams, to the rivers, and ultimately to our oceans, with it impairing the ecosystems of the streams, river, lakes in its wake. This slow death of our lakes and rivers has now met its nemesis in our changing climate, for which a remedy may be very, very hard to reverse. For our climate has now crossed the Rubicon, requiring a sea change in attitude from all of us if we are to adapt to this change. Some of the greatest cities on earth will be required to be moved as our sea level rises. We in Hawke's Bay will not be immune. Already patterns are emerging from our region of much dry conditions, not, I stress, allowing for the flows to be adequate to clear the river. With just 1 degree rise in global temperatures, already extremes of weather are being expressed around the world, almost on a daily scale. Yes, we can blame the El Nino or La Nina Pacific Ocean oscillations as excuses for our so-called unseasonal global weather systems, yet the underlying patterns being expressed are allowing these oscillations to exacerbate our predicament. The building of the dam will be an immense challenge for our region as our climate continues to be drying one into the future. As I always stressed at the beginning of my words to you today, the exponential function is in itself must play a vital, important role in your future planning for our region. For sadly, because of humanity's folly in its zeal for the burning of fossil fuels and infinite desire for economic growth at any cost, our future generations must live with the consequences, and we hope have the ability to remedy the worst of them. For here and now, your plans for the future must express this sentiment if we are to avoid the worst excesses of climate change. for what we have taken from today will not be there tomorrow. We must temper our desire for endless growth if we are to leave something for the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Scott.
Thank you for that impassioned talk for the planet. I do wonder how we're going to curb population growth and how the regional council can achieve it. But if I can come back to the question, if I can come back to the question that is asked here, is, and you do, on the handout you gave, you do highlight the changing climate and the effect on the river. And only if the dam goes ahead and there is stored water, so the storage would have to be paid for, stored water that the council could access for environmental and biodiversity projects for the river, not to clean up the irrigators. You know, it's over and above what the irrigators have to do. So this would be being able to look at climate change and provide some assistance to the river during those very low flow dry summers. Mm-hmm. Would you agree that
well, I think it's really, as I say, I haven't got my submission here, but I think his name is Martin. Mr. Cohen says in his article in the paper, which I totally agree with, is unless you have cyclone bowlers, and last time we had cyclone bowler was 1988, are we going to have sufficient water to be able to fill that dam without starving the tuk of the necessary flows to allow the ecosystem to thrive? And I just cannot. I'm sorry. I'm not a scientist. I'm not an educated person, and mathematics is not my forte. But I do know about the exponential function. That's one thing I do know about. I find it difficult. I find it hard to get my head around how we can get that water down there to save the ecosystems. I'm sorry, I just do. And I mean, I'm not, as I say, I'm not a scientist, Christy, councillor, so I don't really know. But I mean, that's my gut feeling.
Councillor Dick.
Yeah, thanks for your submission. Are you aware that the Ruataniwha scheme consent conditions provide that there should be managed releases into the river to maintain the higher minimum flows that are dictated by Plan Change 6?
Not particularly, no.
So, I mean, that's an essential part of it. Because if you haven't got the stored water, then it's going to be very difficult to achieve those higher minimum flows.
That's right.
Other
exactly.
than by shutting all your irrigators down.
Yeah, I mean, that in itself defeats the object. The fact is that unless you've got that dam full, and as Mr. Cohen said in the article, down the South Island, of course, they've got snow melt, which actually fills those dams. We don't have that privilege. We do not have that privilege of being able to fill the dam.
I'll just remind Councillor Dick that question is probably out of scope as well. So, but could I ask you a question before I go to Councillor Barker? Yeah. Should the tuki be swimmable?
Absolutely. I mean, 40 years ago, my sons used to swim in that river. No problem at all.
So you'd like to see that happen again?
I'd love to think. I pray to be wrong. I pray to be wrong.
Councillor Barker.
My question is that you seem to be in your submission saying that you're opposed to the council paying for the extra water, and you support option C. Do you believe that option is what the general public support at large?
Very difficult, councillor, really. I mean, I'm not trying to be funny, but outside of these rooms, if you was to talk to a lot of people, it's like climate change, you talk to a lot of people, they kind of look at you totally blank and think you're a nutter, you know. So I'm not trying to be funny, but, you know, that I mean, Mr. Chair, you obviously, I can see you feel the same, that it's difficult. How do we educate the people on these issues, you know?
The question wasn't about climate change.
No.
The question was about the spending $35 million on buying extra water to run it down the tuki. You've said you're opposed to that. I'm just asking you.
Absolutely.
You get that, and I'm asking you, is it your impression that that's where the public mood is as well?
Certainly round where I live, my next door neighbour, and neighbours round are opposed to it, but I couldn't really say for the wider. I would imagine there is concern, let's put it that way, they're spending such a large sum of money. Certainly. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Bowden. We're just about out of time. Thank you very much for your presentation, your submission, and we'll be deliberating on this tomorrow, so thank you. Okay, now we have Mr. John Cheyne. Right on the stroke of the bell. So you know the drill, Mr. Cheyne. We've discussed it many times. So
I know it well from last year.
good on you. Let's see if we can be a bit different this year. So welcome anyway. Time starts now.
Yes, kia ora tātou and greetings to you all. Thank you for the opportunity. Two main issues in my submission which you've received the copy of. One was in terms of purchasing additional environmental flows. And the sentence has strong support from me on environmental grounds. And the other one was the appointment of additional staff to the land management section. I compliment the Regional Council for approving the employment of another officer, but I think that you're actually not going far enough. I live in the Tuki catchment, got a large block of 5 hectares. I'm required to do a nutrient budget and a farm environmental management plan. And I've started to go through that process so I can understand it better in terms of the large landowners. But personally, I certainly just want to understand the process and actually what's involved. It's certainly, I work closely with a number of regional council staff, particularly the land management staff in a number of areas. They're working hard, they're providing an extremely good service to the landowners within the Tuki catchment that need to do nutrient budgets and farm environmental management plans. Even if the dam doesn't go ahead, collectively we, in the room here, have a major responsibility for those farm environmental management plans to be prepared. It's important that we front end it rather than wait 3 or 4 years down the track when the deadlines are approaching and find there's been insufficient professional capacity to help those landowners. So it's a real plea from my heart. Seriously think about accelerating the appointment of another 2 additional land management officers. All right, it will be the best investment we can make at this point in time in terms of meeting the standards that have been set down in Plan Change 6 for the Tuki River. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, questions? Councillor Barker.
You speak here, John, about option A and about the environmental flows, environmental benefits for increasing the flow in the Tuki River. Have you seen a scientific-based plan which demonstrates that? Because I haven't. This council hasn't been put to it anyway. No scientific plan that says that will have any measurable effect. Or we've now gone from science-based to mysticism.
Okay. Professionally, I've worked with wetlands for 59 years across most of New Zealand. I understand wetlands extremely well. Rivers and streams, I understand less. In terms of Lake Whātuma, I can absolutely guarantee what's being proposed there will be of immense benefit in terms of that lake. It's important it hasn't got too much water and the levels lifted too high. Whātuma is an absolute winner environmentally. In terms of the rivers and streams, I made it clear in my submission I was unsure. In principle, yes, the benefits would be great, potentially, but I was unsure myself which rivers and streams should receive the benefit, and that needs to be researched further.
But my question, with due respect, was, have you seen a scientific plan which sets out that the 4 million cubic metres of environmental flows will be of a benefit and how it will be a benefit in a measurable way? Because if you have, I'd like to see it, because I have not. This council has not.
Simple answer is no.
That's exactly right.
Sorry, Councillor Scott, then Councillor Dick.
Thank you, Mr. Cheyne, and you said you strongly support the environmental benefits. So given that it's some way out and the actual proposals have not come or been fleshed out, they've only been samples of what could be done, you understand what is happening to that river under climate change. Can you elaborate, please, on why you see this as a public good?
Well, I was involved with the Plan Change 6 in Ruataniwha process. There weren't too many days that I didn't attend. I made strong submissions personally. I supported other submissions from Forest and Bird, Te Taio. I did in my personal submission actually mention the Whātuma example, but it didn't quite make the time of day on that occasion. But certainly, for better or for worse, the decision of the Board of Inquiry we're all stuck with. And there's some good parts to it. There's some parts to it that I would have liked to have seen maybe a little bit better, but we're stuck with that, and it provided for environmental flows up to a certain point. The extra water can't be plucked out of fresh air, all right? So environmentally, there's some real potential benefits of acquiring extra flows by whatever means might be available. I'm not an accountant. It seems quite a bit of money, but I know environmentally, particularly with Whātuma and further investigation in terms of streams and benefits, there's some real benefits that can accrue from it. And I think it's important that the opportunity is not lost.
Should the tuki be swimmable, and certainly in the height of summer?
In places, yes.
Not
Myself and
not
my
where you're fishing, no.
No, but I lived in Napier for many years, been in Central Hawke's Bay for about 8 years. My young children, pre-primary school days, we used to camp on the tuki at Patongata. I've now got my grandkids coming to stay with us, and we go above Waipak, above the poo ponds, for rafting, swimming, kayaking, this sort of thing. So realistically, it would be extremely difficult to have the tuki swimmable in all stretches in all months of the year. But there's definitely places we should be definitely aiming for that sort of standard.
So supplementary, would the extra flow help that?
In terms of the flows that have been approved by the Board of Inquiry in terms of flushing flows, of course the flushing flows will be of benefit. It'll depend on the size, frequency and the timing of it.
I'm talking about if extra environmental flows were available.
Well, not wanting to commit myself or not having seen a commitment as to which river and stream, in principle, Mr Wilson, yes.
Fair comment. Councillor Dick.
John, thanks very much. Now, there's probably a number of people around this table who are not aware of your professional competence and vast experience. But my question to you is, do you believe that your view is possibly a lonely one?
A lonely one?
A lonely one?
Yes. For those of you here, I think every other time I've been at the table here, I've had Te Taio Hawke's Bay Environment Forum hat or supporting Forest and Bird. So, but every organisation has a range of members and you end up with a range of different views on some issues. That's why I chose to submit privately myself.
Thank you. Councillor Bevan.
Thanks, Chair. John, thanks for your submission. I've got two questions. The first question is, you've opted to support A, which is going to cost $1 million a year for improving the environmental flows in the tuki-tuk. If you have $1 million a year and you look at all of the waterways in Hawke's Bay, would that one be your priority, or would there be some other river that might actually be your priority in terms of the level of pollution or improvement that needs to be made? Or should that money maybe be split between 2 or 3 different waterways in this region?
Yeah, parts of the tuki catchment are the worst compared to the Naharoro or the likes of the Tutaikuri. And so I think it was quite reasonable that the council approached the first catchment plan change for the tuki. That's where the biggest problems were. They're still there, and they're still going to be a challenge for us all in years to come.
So I've got one other question. Have you any idea how we're going to get the water into Lake Whātuma?
Yes, it's pretty simple. The proposal to put water into Lake Whātuma is not new. I remember when I was the first manager of DOC in 1987, seeing a report that predated that looked at putting a third of a cube from the Tuki River into Whātuma. It was way back in Acclimatisation Society days, long before they were called Fish and Game, and we were talking about a catchment board. So it's a pretty sound project. I live 600 metres from the lake. Through the Bitten research projects and other things, I've probably spent, been on the lake on 100 different occasions in the last 6 to 8 years, kayaking, walking, swimming when I got tipped out. So I know the lake intimately, as well as my professional experience around wetlands generally across New Zealand.
Spot on time, Mr. Cheyne. Thank you very much for your submission and your presentation. And as I say, we'll be deliberating on this tomorrow. So thank you very much.
Thank you for the opportunity.
No, thank you.